It's hard to plan anything these days. I get it.
Exactly. How about you, man? How's your weekend been?
It's been pretty crazy. I've been just trying to get down into the work. Running the blog is most of the time like I get away with the appearance of that. Oh, we're a fully functional thing, but it's just me running around with the chicken.
Dude,
I'm like an idiot.
I totally get that, man. Yeah, Native Audio, we're a two-man team, and Mike, the other guy who does a bunch of the assembly, he went and unfortunately messed up his leg, like seriously messed it up, and so I've been having to kind of do the builds, but then also we do a weekly blog as well,
right?
And with videos, and so I've been having to kind of manage a bunch of that. So
Dang.
I totally know how it is, man.
The demos have been good though, and especially the stuff that you've been doing with the Aakii has directly influenced what I was doing with it. I was like, okay, so the more I have it this way, I was actually surprised by how deep the tremolo side got. I was just like, the vibrato. I was just like, it's very vocal, and like you mentioned in one of the live talks, there's something about the shortened delay time, the way that when like a pick hits the string, it almost seems to the envelope seems to jump with it in such an easier way, and it's
more responsive.
Yeah, and it's really fun.
Yeah. Well, and that's that was something that I discovered, and we did a slight tweak going from Pretty Bird Woman to Aakii, and because I'm a big Chili Peppers fan, and I was trying to do a lot of I was practicing, and I was trying to use that chorus with a lot of that stuff, but man, dude, I could not get it to dial in, and I realized that I need to shorten the delay time a little bit. So
interesting. Yeah. That's cool, and I might ask you a little more about that in a little bit, because I wanted to not necessarily start a certain way, but I do want to circle around to how you hear things and how you might have the thought how do I get that into a pedal? And it might not be something where you're obviously thinking it's chorus or some other kind of time-based effect. But we'll get there in a little bit. So I wanted to start with screaming at my cat. Sorry.
I got my dogs right over here, so hopefully he's good. But
I understand. I'm definitely an animal guy, so I'm never mad about that stuff. But I have a 20-pound cat, and he really has guts. He can scream. I don't know if you can hear his stupid little baby voice right now.
First I thought it was a baby.
Yep, that's a cat.
He's that bad.
Yeah, and it's constant. But he'll go. He just came out of the closet basically to say hi. But anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit, for people who aren't really familiar with the brand, how you got into pedal design from your basic beginnings of when did you start getting into circuitry in general? How did those thoughts enter your head?
Yeah. So I originally got into the whole pedal thing. I've always been a person that's always taken things apart and tried to figure out how they work. Even when I was young, before I got into music when I was a junior in high school. But before that, dude, I was taking things apart. And I was in middle school. I had a whole pulley system for my trunk, and so that way I didn't have to turn the light off because the light switch was over there, and then my brother would be sleeping, and so I would basically pull up or down to flip the light switch on, up, and so I was always I was always tinkering with things, and
wow.
It wasn't until later on I picked up music. Then you come to this was after graduating high school is like, okay, what am I going to do? What am I going to do with my life? And thankfully, I found out that the stuff that I really enjoy is called engineering. That, like, they actually have an occupation for weird people like me. And that's what I ended up doing. Well, while I was doing my undergrad for electrical engineering, I already had this thought of, man, I want to be able to do something with music and engineering. Like, I think I can do something with this. And I distinctly remember I was doing these winter lessons with my music teacher during one of my years of undergrad. And I was telling him, I was like, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to school so I can build one of these. And I was pointing down to one of his effects processors.
Nice.
And I was like, I think I'm going to try to figure this out. And because I'd love to work for a company that builds pedals or something, that either builds amplifiers or builds some sort of thing that works with music electronics. And fast forward, it just kind of was one of those things where I was like, you know what? Rather than just kind of waiting until I get that job, I'm just going to start taking things apart and trying to figure out how. And thankfully, I was also doing a circuit class as well,
right,
to where I actually figure out, like, it was cool because I was doing this stuff, and then I could come home and look at a circuit and be like, oh, I get why that diode's there, or I get why that resistor is there, and so it was kind of like just doing this whole circuit pedal building thing was kind of a natural intersection of like all my interests, music, just engineering in particular. So that's kind of how I started getting into the whole pedal things. Is I kind of already had this music thing, and then I had engineering, and it was the intersection of the two.
I see. So were you into music as a musician or like a listener?
Yeah. So so it was junior year. Actually, towards the end of sophomore year of high school, my friend, he was like, Mike, you gotta try this game out, Guitar Hero. And I was like, okay. And Guitar Hero was my gateway drug into music. It really did, like, it was just really cool because I was like, oh man, I like this. Like, it wasn't necessarily the game, but it was just like being able to experience music, and like I really kind of like, I don't know, that's kind of how I connected with the music. Well, then of course it's like, okay, let me find out more about this band. Let me find more about this, and then go down that whole trail of like learning bands and learning music. And then it's like, okay, let me pick up the guitar then too, because I want to start trying to see if I can play these. And so that's kind of where that came. So I am like a musician by, I don't know, it's like, I'm not necessarily just an electronics nerd that kind of like gets, that kind of like knows this stuff. Like I am a musician, so like,
sure,
that's being able to think about what the sound is, and then kind of like, give the electronic side of it.
There's definitely not a doubt that you're a musician, because a lot of there's no point in any of your pedals that I can tell from, like, whether it's Native Audio or the previous company, there's like, it's nothing but sweet spot. And that's something that's, I feel like, I don't know, like there's so many pedals out there, right? And to know that there's even just a few brands out there where you could reliably pick up something that's relatively simple for a user that might not be a total like pedal savant. Even with the 3 knobs, I'm like, there's a lot going on here. So I don't know, there's completely usable. So I think you really nail that, and a musician is probably how you nail that, like really knowing what the sweet spot is.
Yeah, and this is like one of the crazy things too, is like as musicians we're so like particular about our sounds, about our controls. And the coolest thing about having, I told you Micah's the other guy that kind of helps do a lot of the pedal stuff here. And the coolest thing about having him come onto the team is I've known him for 10 years now, and he was originally my guitar guy. Like, I'd go to the local music shop, and I'd be like, hey, can I get him to fix my guitar?
Oh, cool.
And, he came onto the team about 3 years ago. But the coolest thing is I was always tossing him prototypes and being like, hey, dude, what do you think of this? Dude, check this out. And, but it's really cool because, like, his audio or his, like, perspective sound-wise is completely, like, kind of on the other spectrum of me. I love warm and, like, dark, and he loves bright and jangly. So being able to have somebody to bounce ideas off, you kind of end up getting a product that's, like, very expansive. But yeah, exactly what you're talking about. It's that sweet spot.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and I think you maybe this is just totally unformulated. The way you work that middle knob with the mix control as a chorus and, like, going between the two functions, that's genius. And probably hard to design. Is that hard to design like that?
Not necessarily. You know what's funny is doing that is probably easier than actually doing a full mix. So going from bypass all the way to full vibrato. But here's the thing, we tried that and it just didn't feel natural, because it's like, why do I have the option to go to bypass? Then I would just have the pedal off, right? And there's this area between dry and, like, chorus that, like, it's subtle enough to where it's like, man, what are we doing here? Like, like, give me chorus or don't. So that's why we ended up just getting rid of that, like, quadrant of bypass to chorus, and we just kind of threw it out and just kind of let's allow the player to focus more on this chorus vibrato. So we opened up that range, so there's a little bit more playability in between chorus and vibrato. So your mindset ends up becoming more chorus than
That's so cool. When I was actually trying to get, like, a fully balanced sound out of it, and there was, like, not necessarily noon everywhere, but, like, trying to match, like, what my amp was doing to where I'm like, all right, I know what a chorus is, where, like, you know, it sends the one signal and then it bends the two kind of around it. And I spent a long time there. Like, once I found this spot, I was like, this doesn't sound like chorus so much as it just sounds better. Like, I found this spot where I was, like, turning it off and on and off and on, just playing different things and looping different things, and I was like, I'm not sure what the speed is, if this is an LFO thing, but everything sounds better once it's engaged. I just don't hear, like, a movement thing. But that's when I was, like, writing these questions down, I was like, this is that sweet spot thing that we run into every once in a while, where it's just totally likable. I don't know.
And especially with Aakii, because what we ended up doing is we did this, like, very subtle thing to not only the delayed signal, but we also did it to the bypass signal. Like, the bypass, so, like, chorus is you delay a signal and then you re-merge that delayed signal with your dry signal, and that's chorus. Well, what we ended up doing, because I've always had this beef, and I've got my favorite chorus is the Ibanez SC10.
Nice.
It's beautiful because it has depth, rate, and delay time, which is really cool. But here's the thing, it's very thin. I've had a Boss CE2, very thin. Like, I've had other choruses, very thin. And I finally figured out what the problem was. And part of it is the delay line, but the other part is re-merging that dry signal. And so we actually sprinkle a little bit of, we kind of trim the highs when we re-merge that dry signal in. So that dry signal is actually slightly darker than the bypass signal. And what happens is when you get that pitch shiftedness and it merges with that retailored bypass dry signal, it ends up sounding smoother to the ears and more subtle. Like, or not subtle, but it just sounds a lot, like, not harsh.
Yeah,
and
that's a great way of putting it.
Yeah, and to your point, like, when you actually have rate all the way down, and like depth up, you kind of get this weird kind of phasing, but it's like a warm type of phasing. So it's there's a lot of different flavors that you can really capture in Aakii.
Yeah, you really can. I have heard a lot of good things about it, and I was like, it's been so long that I dug a chorus pedal. Chorus is cool, but I've definitely been conscious of the issues you're referring to, where I'm like, kind of the music that we play, the music that's really popular on Fecking Bahamas is like so trebly, so high mid-range anyway, that like honestly math rock and prog just kind of make me get ear fatigue without even thinking about it. I'm just like, yeah, we're gonna be listening to a lot of snare drum, lots of Telecaster, lots of high strat neck pickup or bridge pickup, sorry. So it's an attack, but I love what the chorus does to that.
Dude, I appreciate that. It's it's definitely one of those things. Chorus is always like, I hear people play chorus and I'm like, man, that sounds sweet. I'm gonna play my chord, and then I plug it in and I'm like, oh man. But fast forward, like I finally got Aakii, which I feel really hit that spot that kind of is almost like that post-production style of chorus.
Nice.
So like when in a chorus like on an album,
right,
it's kind of been mastered, then a full mix, which doesn't sound so shrill and so like in your face. Whereas Aakii is like, it's kind of like that post-production where it's kind of smoother, and it just sits really well.
Sweet. So while we're kind of talking about that pedal particularly, and how it's sort of a maybe it's kind of like too right on the nose to say it's like the sister version to the other pedal that came out before it, right? The Pretty Bird Woman is the one before, and that's the preset version, right?
That is the preset version. And this year we ended up doing something called the Aakii series, and we actually what we ended up doing was we had these different pedals, different flavors, and they kind of sit with like different people. You show one pedal to Joe Schmo and he's like, oh man, tempo, whoa, that's way above me. And then you show another person presets and they're like, man, I love this functionality. And like, it was really kind of one of the things of like, oh man, this would be cool if we could kind of like adapt these pedals in a way that could kind of reach different people, different strokes for different folks. And that's kind of what we ended up doing as Aakii series is, with our reverb, we did a thing, but with Pretty Bird Woman, basically took Pretty Bird Woman and it was like, okay, what are kind of core spots of Pretty Bird Woman? How can we present that in a way that's very, very practical without like dumbing down the effect?
Right. Yeah, good call. Yeah, because I mean, I think when people as a buyer, or not even just as a buyer, but like, we're someone that's checking out pedals and then we see two versions of the pedal, we obviously are like, I have to get both. But I like that you give us pretty distinct options too. You're like, if you are someone that's going to be tinkering in the studio or for recording, maybe this one's going to be more important, or like something from the 3-knob series is more important for gigs. And I think that's a good way for, maybe I'm wrong, but I hope I'm not. I hope it's a good way for you to like have those moments you're talking about of like kind of like grace with your design, where you're like, you know what, I did super well with this one feature, but this guy, he kind of wants this other thing out of it. I never thought about that. Maybe I'll expand into that. So I mean, I hope that's more of it gives you more options without feeling like you're, like you said, compromising or dumbing anything down. So that's cool.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the coolest things that we've done so far with the Aakii series itself is, so we came out with Buffalo Days, and Buffalo Days is our multi-reverb, and it's our multi-reverb, and hold up here, somebody's buzzing me. So Buffalo Days is our multi-reverb, and what we ended up doing was we took that preset format and then we dialed it down into this 3-knobber. But the really cool thing is that 3 knocks, you can still toggle trails. You have like momentary latching. You still have up to 4 different reverb modes, and so it's like there's nothing that's kind of, I would say, like corners cut around it, which is really cool because some people that might have been intimidated by the presets, this is just a great alternative. But then it also allows us to really kind of just further explore the sounds, because you get into this, being a manufacturer, you run into this thing of like, you can only do so many I don't know, like each product is your own baby, and so you spend time on it, but then like, man, I don't want that to be the last time I try chorus, or I don't want that to be the last time I try reverb. So exploring these really allow us to kind of just, I don't know, just explore the sound. And that's kind of what we say is like, it's the same, it's a similar story and a similar sound, but just a different perspective.
Right.
And that's really kind of the story between Pretty Bird Woman and Aakii, is like, yeah, their stories are similar. Their stories are similar, but their sound is just a different perspective.
Cool. Yeah, and I read that, I think, on the blog too, and I was like, that's a great way of putting it, I think. Because we're very visual, I think, as people that like are into pedals. You know, it's not just even the way that, I think, for me, the way I've gotten most engrossed and obsessed with pedals isn't when it's just an image. It's like when someone tells me the story behind it, and then it's kind of like I can't help but think of it every time my eyes look down. I'm like, that is what's happening. Like, it doesn't even take me bypassing or turning it on. I'm just like, that idea exists right here, right now. And I think that's just powerful for artistic people, right?
I think it is. And to your point, like, there is a visual aspect of just products in general. I mean, that's why we buy a guitar in this color and in this format. Is like, there's a partial where we love to see a guitar that's like this color or something like that.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask a little bit about, like, not necessarily something that I think you would take a class on when you're getting an education or a formal education, but I wondered if this came up maybe.
Sorry about that, dude.
Oh, no, I get it. My dog is behind me now, so I totally understand.
Yeah, my dog upstairs, he jumped down and then she jumped down, and then this dog started freaking out. So we have 2 dogs here.
That's cool. I have 2 cats and 1 dog, so it's always a circus.
Dude, how do you do that?
I don't. It's more them than us. You know, we survive that. That is really what we do.
But my guy who works with me, he has 2 cats, and he had a dog, but she passed away. But just the 2 cats, he's like, dude, I'm gonna go crazy.
Yeah, you heard one. There's more than one.
Yeah. So sorry about that.
No, don't worry about it. So if I won't even bother with like the back story part of this, but I wanted to know if you had an opinion, or a strong one at least, on the thought of analog versus digital.
No, I don't necessarily have really a perspective on it. Well, I guess my perspective is that I'm kind of middle of the line. If you can make it sound good, then I'm in. Before I got into pedals, I was using like effects processors, and it got the job done.
Right.
Just until I got into pedals, and I was like, oh man, I can kind of get my hands on the pedals a little bit better. So I don't necessarily have any beef against digital versus analog. And it's just if you can make the digital sound good, because there's also analog pedals that don't sound good. And it's kind of one of those things of like, yeah, if you can make it sound good.
Fair enough. Yeah, I'd have to agree. And I mean, it's been long enough, right, for digital effects to catch up to whatever analog was doing. That's just my perspective, but like, I also have to force myself in that box as someone that's just like a normal person with like a normal DIY studio. I'm like, this is enough. This is enough. But I'm not losing.
Well, and one of my favorite overdrive/distortion sounds is actually from a Boss effects processor.
Oh.
I think it's the GT1000 or GE1000.
Oh, yeah, with all the presets.
With all the presets, but then there's also the G50 or GT50, one of the two. And there's this overdrive. They say it's overdrive. It's supposed to be like Tube Screamer-ish apparently or something. It doesn't sound like a Tube Screamer. It just sounds like, to me, it sounds like a distortion pedal that is like creamy and warm, but then also does a really good job at, like, when you roll down the volume, it cleans up really well. And so when I was playing that, I literally just had it on that one setting, and I was just playing with my volume knob, and it was digital. And I still, to this day, Kiaayo, War Party, Makoyii, like all those pedals, I try to capture that sound.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
I had a similar experience with not the Yamaha, the Vox Dynamic Looper 2, like the big, chunky, gross looper that I think just failed as soon as they started selling it. It had a overdrive on it that also claimed to be a Tube Screamer. And when I turned it on, I was like, this is like at the very least like a TS9 all the way up. And it was something that I couldn't articulate and still can't. Like if I turn it on, I would still not really be able to tell you like, what, that sounds more like a Tube Screamer or whatnot, but it has really good dynamic and really good harmonics. And I was just like, I don't have an overdrive pedal that really, for many years I didn't have one that did it. And now I think I'm compensated, but like for it to be coming out of a failed piece of gear, technically, I was like, this is really unique. You know, sometimes the trash is the best stuff.
Yeah, well, and that's the whole thing with the Boss unit that I had. Like it was digital, and like they made it sound good. So like I'm like, man, and I'm still trying to capture that sound. So yeah, when it comes to analog, digital, if you can make it sound good, I'm in.
Cool, nice. I think that's a solid answer, and hopefully encouraging to the people that read this. Oh yeah, super beginner. I should have asked this earlier, and the way that I'll do these is I normally like will take the clips of the conversation and type it out, and then later I'll release like the audio, and sometimes I'll do the video, but I have an idea for what we're doing. Like I'll tell you while we're just doing this, like I'm rebuilding what we had on the site before. That was a 2-dimensional map for like scrolling around the world and finding bands that way. It was fun. Unfortunately, the code got a little messed up and now it's unavailable. So I'm learning Unity, and I'm gonna like recreate the whole thing in like a 3-dimensional situation. So we're like, you have to actually go and find bands and stuff in like a library. So I want there to be like bonus content where instead of like, hey, what's this blank thing? It's actually these conversations where like they get to have a much larger unedited or largely unedited part of the conversation instead of just the translation that we put in the blog.
Dude, that's the best stuff though. Like,
it'll be fun, yeah.
You know, the lost tapes.
Exactly.
Those are the best. Those are the best parts because it's so natural, and that's kind of why I really enjoy doing the whole Instagram live video stuff. Is that it really truly is like not necessarily a polished product, but it's something that like is very in the moment and like however somebody's feeling that day, how I was feeling that day, like what I was doing that day is caught on camera. It's a really cool, natural.
Right. Yeah, and then you don't think about it either. Later you're like, I can tell, you know, I had some bad food the day before. I can tell. I was just like trying not to have a moment.
Exactly.
But so other basic beginner question that I should have asked earlier. What was your first soldering experience like?
It was a whole thing of, I don't know how to do this, I'll figure it out type of thing. It was like, well, one, I didn't know what type of solder to use. Two, like, I didn't know what type of iron to use. I think I got this like $20 iron off of Amazon, and I had just some iron or solder that I got too, and it worked, and I burned myself a couple times. But yeah, it was a very sad experience.
I get that. I had just had my first experience like last, I guess even just 3 or 4 months ago soldering. I just took some pickups out of Strat, rewired it, and got soldering. And I think it was a good experience because I'm no longer afraid. But like you said, I was just like, this is really kind of messy, and I get why a tech kind of has like a big space for doing this. Don't do it, you know, in your little room with no ventilation and all that.
Oh, dude, it's whatever. Like, like, especially if you're doing it from a hobby. Yeah, and one of my favorite authors, he describes of like people ask like, man, how did you become such a great writer, or how did you become such a great speaker? And his whole thing is you start with being a bad writer. You start with being a bad speaker. And that's kind of similar to the whole soldering thing, is how do you become a good solder person? You just start soldering. How do you become a great blog writer? You just start writing blogs. And it's the whole over and over and over.
True.
Eventually you're fine-tuning that craft. So
that's cool. Yeah, and that's very valid. Definitely you gotta learn from your mistakes.
Yeah. Oh yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, I know I've done that. I think probably to this day our biggest mistake is there's this band, won't name the band, but they gave us 2 pieces of code. One is for the premiere of a single, one is for the premiere of a video. I shouldn't have got the premiere for the video, but that's the one that got published, and that was bad. That was not the smallest band we've ever covered. Lots of fans, just a bad moment. But I've never done anything like that again. I've reformatted like over and over to make sure it never happens. And yeah, that was a moment where I just sat down with the people that were left on the team and I was like, guys, that won't happen again. No one's fault but mine. I am dumb. You know, but
it's in those situations you learn though. We did a similar thing, but we paid for a demo, and we spent a lot of freaking money on this demo, and because we bought the wrong package, it was misinterpreted between me, Micah, and the demo guy, and I didn't want to he already did the recording. I didn't want to cut back, and I was like, dude, this is one we just gotta eat. And we did, and we're just like, oh my gosh, so much money.
that would not be fun. That I understand. Like that's probably that can be a large setback. I'm glad you pulled through though.
Yeah. And now we're just more conscious of our conversations.
There you go. Yeah, they're better conversations because of experience. But hey, this is kind of a good time to transition maybe from the topic. I won't take up too much more of your time, but like I did want to close the what's left on the topics of conversation and language itself because I love, how we were talking about doing the potential raffle to get this pedal, get the proceeds from, so we could probably make the same money over again, donate all that to the institute that we were talking about.
Yes.
And then so now this is where I start hopefully not butchering words.
You're totally fine.
Okay, I would like to start with just something simple. For us, for me, for most readers of the blog, they're gonna look at the word Aakii, and now, is it right for us to hear a K sound, or should we hear a G sound when we're reading that word, the Aakii?
Oh yeah, so Aakii. So it's interesting. So the Blackfeet language is interesting. So you got Kiaayo, which has that k sound, but then you have Aakii, which has that g sound, but it's very sharp. Like so, I can say Aakii and it sounds like I'm saying Aakii. Like it's
Right.
not necessarily different until you like slow it down. And so what was your question though? Like.
So if I am reading it for you, like what's the correct way? Is it with the G sound?
I think we have the phonetic on like the Mike Trombley of Native audio phonetic on the site, and so it's like and then the next is G.
That's
so
awesome.
Like G.
I'll definitely point the readers in the direction, or I'll put the link there to that stuff, because I feel like that's something that's really fascinating just with not just other languages, but I've found that in my experience, like with the Paiute people locally, there is, I think for most, like let's just say white people, if we're going to study an average language or a different language in the average institution, we're going to choose from something that's like loosely related to English. We're gonna see something that's kind of romantic language, like maybe French or Italian, or these things that can actually like trace large chunks of those words to English, or like they're somewhat familiar. But when we go into many native languages, I find that it's like so refreshingly not familiar. It's so not English, and it's really beautiful that way. And so I do want to find a way to support that thing, especially like locally here, helping people in the reservation. I worked with Pete Sands for a little while on a documentary that I don't know if that will ever come out, but we went up to the reservations in Monument Valley where he grew up, and we basically just helped him shear some sheep and gave them other stuff. But they're working on a water filtration technology that is supposed to be a really big deal, but I'm sure you know how long those things take, having to get approval from different people and different authorities and the ways those communications have to take place is not fast,
Yes. Well, especially if it's on tribal land too, that throws a whole curveball into it.
It is, yeah. And I mean, even when, I think everyone wants to move forward with a certain thing, the way things are scheduled and the way things take place and really just the way time is experienced on reservations is so different than the way that we experience, I guess, in like a city or a town.
Yeah.
And it's very refreshing. I actually wanted to know, like, when you were noticing that you were interested in technology and you were growing up on reservations, did that ever feel like at odds for you?
Yeah, most definitely. And that was kind of one of the biggest things that I try to advocate. We have on nativeaudio.com/community, I kind of just share a little bit of my story, and I just share a piece of my story, but then there's other part where I share my story. But one of the biggest things is that growing up on the reservation, the sports is really huge. And so it's like, if you're not playing sports, then it's like, go hang out at grandma's house. Like, go inside, play a video game. Like, it wasn't, I was kind of, I kind of felt like I played basketball, but like, man, I just wasn't like, it just didn't connect to me like music connected to me. like engineering connected to me. And so fast forward like to who I am today, like one of my biggest things is like I want to be able to, like with native audio and just me in general, like I want to be that kind of light for that person that might be kind of wandering, kind of lost, like, man, I'm not really connected with basketball, like, or football, like these different sports that are highly regarded on the reservation. But I want to be able to be able to show them like, hey, there's other things out there than basketball. And because I was in that position where like, I'm like, what do I do? I play, it's still fun, but like, I just didn't really connect with it like I do music and engineering. And so I definitely fell on an island for sure.
Interesting. I really appreciate your answer to that, because I know that based on the experiences and conversations I have, I know that when you don't identify with those things strongly, like it can be daunting to like have a social life and not really know where you fit in and stuff.
Yes.
And I think that some people can maybe experience that in other areas of life, maybe other walks of life, but experiencing that in such a small community, I imagine is more difficult than just being like, I'm not sure what I want to do with my life. With a communal magnifying glass, I'm sure that's a little more difficult to say. Like,
it very much is, because when your mom played on the varsity team, your dad played on the varsity team, your aunt played on the team, your uncle played on the team, and then your grandparents watched them play on it. Like, there's a lot of pressure, and then it's like, and then even when it comes summertime and there's like 500 tournaments, and you're like, I don't want to do this.
Oh man.
Yeah. So so one of the biggest things with native audio is I want to be able to further strengthen kind of the relationship between people on the reservation and the whole STEM community, and also the creative arts. And we've been able to do that this year with our Pretty Birdwoman scholarship, where we were able to gift a creative arts student and a STEM student with a scholarship.
That's amazing.
Really cool. Yeah, it was really fun, and it was cool to hear their stories too, because one of them, the creative arts, she was actually she was wanting to go to school for dance, and one of her biggest things was she was wanting to be able to incorporate her traditional, like her Blackfeet style dancing into kind of more modern contemporary dances.
Oh, wow.
which is really cool. It's very parallels it with kind of native audio. And then the other was she was wanting to go for microbiology, and kind of the goal with that was she was wanting to be able to later on be able to make pharmaceuticals a little bit easier for native people to be able to get.
Sure, yeah, of course.
Which is really cool. So it's cool to see these people thinking about their community, but then also like thinking about like their future and their development. So we're totally on board with that.
Yeah, and it's like you say on the website, like real change. That's really what that is. That's the forefront of it.
That's exactly change that matters. If we can just inspire somebody to kind of pursue what they love, like I feel like we're kind of doing our thing.
Good. Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And then so just as sort of like an extension of like what we're talking about, like language to language, I was wondering if we could get a translation from Makoyii. Just here for like, I know it probably already exists, but just like here.
Yeah. So these exist on the product pages as well, like with their stories. So Makoyii it's wolf in Blackfeet.
Okay, that's wolf. Yeah. That's very cool.
Yeah, wolf and Blackfeet. And like back to kind of the whole phonetics and like the spellings and all that stuff, this is something that I found really interesting. This is after I was chatting with my cousin. He's one of the teachers, name's Jesse DeRozier, and he's one of the teachers over at the Pagan Institute.
Okay.
Which is better known as the Cutswood. Like that's a sub-department of the overall Pagan Institute.
Oh.
But he's one of the language teachers, and I was talking with him and I was like, Jesse, like, am I spelling this right? Like, do I need this? And one of his biggest things is like, spell it how you feel like it can connect with you. Because here's the thing: is like, uh, the Blackfeet language, we ourselves didn't necessarily have English word, like English letters, like because English letters I think is like Arabic or something like that,
Sure.
like all the way back. And so we didn't have this alphabet that we could like. So like when you have words like Makoyii, or you have words like Kiaayo, like those are basically us trying to take the Blackfeet language and the way we say it and trying to put that in a format in the English language that kind of connects, kind of bridges that gap. And so that's why, like, sometimes you'll see, like, Makoyii has two eyes at the end, and that's just to kind of, like, phonetically go, oh, that's, like, the E sound in police. Like,
okay.
So, like, it's rather than just being, like, a sharp E, it's like an E, like, Makoyii.
Okay.
Like, kind of a long. So, yeah, so that just kind of like is one of those things. Don't worry too much. Like, oh man, is this right? Is this what? Because you actually see a lot of Blackfeet, though. Like, so our thing is like we are the Southern pagan of the Blackfeet Nation, the Blackfeet, the Blackfoot Confederacy. So Blackfoot Confederacy is divided amongst different sections. Because when the United States and Canada went and sliced our tribe, we are the Southern pagan, so we're the United States side of the Blackfoot Confederacy, and we kind of consider ourselves Blackfeet. So you'll hear Blackfoot, Blackfeet, and the Southern kind of are the ones that are like we're Blackfeet, and also to that, we are kind of like so you have Ohio, Michigan, they're all the United States, right?
Sure.
Our kind of state would be the Southern pagan, Southern pagan, and which in the Blackfeet language they consider that area as Amskapi Pagani, and but the thing is, the word Pagani, you'll see people spell that with one eye, two eyes, like two eyes here, like it's just kind of a variation of. Because there really is no like set, I guess, spelling for a lot of these words because it's at its root kind of it's a Blackfeet language.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And I think that among native languages, from what I understand, there's like a shared importance, a shared urgency that these languages are preserved, right? Like that they don't dwindle and go off into just the sands of time. We just the effects. I think it's creative. A creative person can like just think of like the loss of a language as like really complex and really awful, but like for it being attached to a culture, obviously that's tragic for a way of expressing an entire culture to be lost. That's really intense and something that I think a lot of people can't relate to. So
yeah, it's interesting. A lot of the way the systems were set up was to diminish the culture itself. Like for example, like it's weird because and this is like something that I'm kind of realizing a little bit more as I get older because I grew up on the reservation, and so like when I would hear a lot of these songs sung, a lot of these drums hit, like it was just like, oh yeah, whatever. And then fast forward, you're kind of like, man, I miss that, or man, like being around that kind of just that culture, like it does you kind of like miss it, but then also you're like, man, what's next for my like next generation, right? And for example, like on the books, I'm considered like 66% Blackfeet, and my daughter, she just got her enrollment card last month, and on her enrollment is considered 33% because my wife's she's from Indiana, and so because my wife didn't have Blackfeet, my daughter is basically half the Blackfeet on the books, half the Blackfeet I am. So it's like a lot of these systems are set up. Then my daughter, she'll have kids, and then those kids will be half of
like 16%. Yeah.
Unless marries like a Blackfeet, but like, and then it just keeps dwindling down. But like, so it's interesting, and it's weird, but the best thing you can do is try to keep your culture alive, and that's kind of what I'm trying to do with Native Audio. It's like I don't necessarily have the calling on my life, I feel like, to become a professor, teach a lot of these histories, because I love music, I love engineering, and Native Audio has been a really great for me to, one, learn my culture, but two, also like share what I've learned with the other people. And I think that's the coolest thing Native Audio is that, like, I'm not an expert on Blackfeet history and just Native American history in general. I'm learning stuff every single day, but I think it's cool to be able to kind of like showcase that to people that might have otherwise not came across our culture, our history. And when somebody goes into a music store and they're like, can I get a Kiaayo? They're like literally speak the language. So that language is being kept alive. It's a really way to just kind of keep the culture. Yeah.
The way you said it too, the way you just closed out that with like they literally say it. That this whole time it had not, the light bulb had not gone off. That is kind of genius. That's really beautiful.
Yeah, and that's a cool thing. And I think Kiaayo was the first one that we approached with that, and then came Makoyii and then Aakii.
Mm-hmm.
So like a lot of these are like they're literally the Blackfeet language, and if they're not the Blackfeet language, they're at least the talking point for a story that goes back to our Blackfeet heritage, or my Blackfeet heritage.
Man, that's really I really appreciate you sharing as much as I'm not trying to put you on the spot and be like, please tell me everything you know about your culture, because I know that's BS.
No, dude, you're fine. Tomorrow I'm actually going back to where I got my undergrad and my master's. I'm going back tomorrow for Indigenous Peoples Day. I'm going to be given a kind of sharing the story and the sound of Native Audio. So I'm going to be like basically walking through each of the pedals like, hey, this is Kiaayo. And then I'm going to share the story of Kiaayo and then kind of do a similar thing like on Mike Trombley, blah, 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 and everything. But I love just sharing the stories, and for people like you that give me an opportunity to kind of just showcase the culture and like the sound, like I appreciate it.
Dude, I really appreciate it too. I won't take up too much more of your time, but all of this is like really it's very happening around me, you know, that I live in a place called St. George, Utah. It's like just over the border of Arizona.
Dude, I went to St. George. Me and my wife stayed there for one night on our honeymoon, because we flew into Vegas and we split this up. We did because we wanted to go to the national parks.
Yeah.
Over there, and so we were there. So we were like in was it Mount Zion? We went to Mount Zion for like the first half of our thing, and then the second half we went to Florida for more of a beachy type of thing.
Wow,
so we went
nice.
National Park to beachy, but we drove through St. George during like the second week of August, and it was hot.
Yeah,
it was.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, this would be terrible if your AC unit went out.
It'll happen.
It was like 114, I think.
Yeah, my spouse and I both worked at Zion. We were working at the visitor center. You might have even saw us. That's funny.
Is that where you guys are working right now?
No, not anymore, but we were. Yeah, and
okay.
that was a large part of, I think, for me, this connection of, because I came out here to kind of work on a documentary, again, with Pete Sands and some people, let's just say ex-government, and we were trying to do a documentary connecting certain phenomenon in the area with native culture local to the Dene and the Paiute. And it was going really well, but the pandemic obviously messed everything up. And
Yeah.
anyway, while doing my research for that documentary, I was helping write the script. I learned a lot that just like really put me in touch with how these stories, how this kind of story, this ugly kind of backstory of America, of the United States, had like not just shaped people around me, but like my own family. I was starting to find out, like, because we were starting to find out that I potentially, like, past a couple generations back, had some Native Americans in my blood. Note going up from Mexico into Arizona, and
Okay. Yeah.
my grandfather's always been, or before he passed, he was just unable to really figure it out, and we were just like, well, that's cool. But the more that I learn about like just the actual history, I feel like this strong pull to try to help. I don't know. It's not fun to live in a place like St. George and be aware of all the ugly history. And I mean, this is a very cut and paste, very cookie cutter place too. So the more you're aware of like the real history of what happened around this area, it's just I feel like you can't help but like start getting involved. And that's why when I started seeing these pedals and started hearing the sounds, I was like, this is kind of like the exact next thing that I want to do. I love tech, I love writing and all this stuff, but I do want to put a sense of purpose behind it. And like
Yeah.
that's what keeps me doing it, or else it's just
Yeah.
work. So
Oh yeah, dude. There has to be a purpose. Like otherwise, you just like either one get burnt out or just like two kind of just fade
yeah.
away. And the purpose is what's gonna give you fuel to keep on typing in the middle of the night.
It
At least I
does.
feel like that. That's what it does for me.
Yeah,
You know?
no, that's very true. But anyway, dude, I really appreciate all your time. I feel like I have way more than enough to do like a little profile here. I might hit you up with a couple more questions when I'm doing my write up. And then I'll ask you how we want to do the raffle thing. Because what I'm thinking is we'll probably just have people buy in at like 40, $50. And then we'll do a raffle. And then we'll donate the proceeds to the Institute. And then we'll ship them the pedal.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, let's do that. The Pagan Institute themselves actually has a link that you can pay, like you can donate.
Okay, yeah, we'll do we can donate like show the receipt, don't take that number over there, donate that for whatever reason.
No, I think that'd be cool, dude. We should totally do that. And then if you want to do up some sort of promo material, I can definitely share that. And
Cool.
Yeah. I think it'd be really cool. And like I said, my cousin, his name's Jesse, is one of the bigger ones that are like he's heading it up and everything. Like, and it's like, dude, it's seriously, it's a cool thing. I think you probably seen on our webpage where we talked like in 1995, like there was no children that could speak the language, and their mission was to kind of turn that around, and they've been turning that around, and it's so cool to see that there's kids that are like 8 years old that can like tell you a story in Blackfeet, can say a prayer in Blackfeet, like can do so many things like in the Blackfeet language, and especially because it's a lot easier to learn languages when you're younger.
Yeah.
So it's cool that they're doing that, and man, they're definitely they got a good thing going, and anything that we can do to support that, I think would be sweet. So I appreciate you wanting to do that, man.
Yeah, of course. I think that we have a lot of people that'll really be into it too. Like math rock in Prague is like full of people that I get along with in terms of values. It's kind of like punk rock light, you know.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, we're not maybe screaming our heads off, but we're still just kind of like nerds that maybe didn't fit in. And I just think that if you want to do the right thing, you probably don't listen to math rock, but you know, I don't know. I just think we got a good hearted community.
I'm the weird thing of like I feel like some bands might be math rocky, but then I don't know if they are. I don't know. Like,
I use the word. You just say it's math rock because it's like a funny thing to say. I don't look at it as a this band has to be math rock or it's like illegitimate. You know, like there are bands that set out to only be math rock, like let's say Giraffes, or This Town Needs Guns, Don Caballero. Those are like hardcore math rock, but
Yeah.
there are bands that are not math rock that are still mathy.
Yes. Well, and then I talked to is it, man, it's slipping, the brand is slipping my head. He's the pedal manufacturer. Deep Space Devices.
Okay.
Taylor, who does a lot of his artwork, his kind of like in a math rocky type of situation. And when we were sitting down, we were at NAMM. This is 2019 NAMM, and we were taking our lunch break. Like we were kind of, I just bought something to eat, and so I just sat down and we just started talking. Me and Taylor were having this conversation, and he was very similar to what you were saying. Was like, it's kind of like what you said about like saying you're math rocky. You don't necessarily say you're math rocky. You kind of just do it, and then if you do say you're math rocky, then you're kind of like, oh, what?
Yeah, like you don't want it. It's a joke in the community. No, I think it's like everyone wants to be a cool nerd, and then once you're a cool nerd, you are betraying the nerds that are not cool. So I just accept that we are all nerds, maybe trying to be cool, you know.
It's like the first rule of Fight Club, right?
I don't think these kids have seen Fight Club.
You don't think? Okay, never mind.
Maybe we'd have to remake Fight Club in a math rock way. Oh, that is just giving me nightmares thinking
of basement playing math rock.
Oh no. That's pretty funny though.
What's that?
That's pretty funny. Like I could maybe work that into the game, because I want like the players to like walk around and like have to put records back. Like, oh, you found this band from Argentina. You have to go to the Argentina room and put them back.
Yeah.
And
you tell somebody you're in a math rock band. You're not supposed to do that.
Exactly. Yeah. Now you're in math rock jail.
Yeah, math rock jail. Yeah. Dude, that's awesome, man. No, that's cool, dude. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity though to chat up, and of course, if you need to meet up for a conversation again, just let me know. Cool. If you want to shoot some information. I love doing stuff like this, just connecting with people. Like this is why we're doing this, right? To be able to kind of share our stories and just be able to get the word out about music in general.
Yeah, and I think for what I want to do with the blog with these conversations too is like there are not enough places where pedal developers and pedal consumers are equal. And so I just want this place where like you can both not even have a conversation, because like it's you doing the talking, but they can just read it and be like, this isn't a situation where it has to get 5 out of 5 or 10 out of 10, or they're like, I never will review or write stuff up like that. I'm just gonna be like, this is the sound, this is what's coming out. You listen or you read because you like my perspective. So I don't want to ever put it in like a grading format, but I kind of only will work with things that I want to elevate. So don't worry about any of that.
Totally fine. You're totally fine. Yeah, and I appreciate this, dude.
All right. Well, have a good rest of your day. Enjoy your day tomorrow.
Yes. Yeah, I will. Hey, really quick. This is like off the whole thing, but like when you do these, when you do the blog writing, how does that, like, what's the process for you in doing these?
The quickest, most often thing, like this is my day to day, is I have nothing planned. I am just at work, drooling, hating life. Some guy messages me, hey, do you remember that we had an album out? Oh, shoot. Jump on WordPress and take about 2 hours, maybe, to get something about 500 words to 1,000 words. I love to write, so it's really easy for me to just like start writing a bunch, then deleting, and then just publish after I format it. Yeah, there's just a couple formatting things that I like to make sure happen. Like I want artists to be formatted a certain way, albums a certain way, songs a certain way. Just like, hey, this is bold, this is italic, this is quoted. And then I just make sure it's got a good hero image. Then I have to spend the next 15 minutes publishing it on all the social medias.
Yeah. Okay. Dude, that's so cool. Yeah, I'm always just curious because we started It was actually last October, November. We started doing a weekly blog, and kind of our approach to that was not necessarily like go crazy, like as far as like in-depth storytelling, but more of like what would it be like if we were having a conversation with somebody that we showed them like one setting on this pedal. The same conversation that happens between you, like if me and you were in the same room and I was showing you Aakii, I was like, dude, check this out. If you set this setting right here, setting right here, and you turn the mix like this, check this out. And that's kind of what we want. That's kind of the ethos we wanted to capture with the blog stuff. And we've been doing it. It's been a year now, and we've been doing the video portion too. So we've kind of been sharpening our video skills, sharpening our writing skills. But it's one of those things where it's like I don't know. It's cool to exercise different parts of your brain.
Yeah, I'm trying to get into the more of like, how do you, I guess, just like social media friendly formatting of video and audio. Like that stuff is stuff that I basically have always been doing for myself. I'm like, well, I know that I don't need to look at this thing, you know. So now getting things pretty is kind of a new process. Like when I did the Wonder Effects one, I just kind of I winged it in a very math rock way. Like I just made it kind of funny, and that was more than enough for like the videos to get the point across, because it's basically just kind of a pet video, like of my cats and my dog and the logo. Like it's nothing to do with the pedal, but you are hearing, and I do describe what's happening with the pedal, and what makes those videos different. You know, like this is one setting, this is another setting, all that. So for the blog stuff, or sorry, for the pedal stuff, that's how I want to continue to set stuff up. Have a chunk of me talking about it, a little soundbite, chunk of me talking about it, soundbite, a couple more times. And that's what we did with Nick, but Nick's fuzz pedal is actually like anti-math rock. It was hard for me to get in the game. I love it, and I'm gonna keep it because in like the way that I will normally play guitar, just chilling by myself, it makes sense. But I think it was too much for what I was trying to actually get across. So I'm looking forward to the different challenge with the Aakii, because it's really math rock friendly. I think there's some artists that really do throw a lot of chorus in there, like Nick Reinhardt from Terra Mellos. Huge modulation guy, and some of the subtle and extreme will really satisfy those kids that are into those sounds. And then the fusion and jazz people too, I think, will get a ton out of the middle stuff. So yeah, there's way more. Not in any way am I diminishing Nick's work, because I love his pedals. But that was like actually a challenge for me to like, all right, the first thing we're going to talk about is fuzz, the least usable thing for you delicate math rockers.
But that's the part where you're like learning to get to that next level, right?
I hope.
Because it was very similar with when we came up with Makoyii. It's like, man, this is another dirt pedal, but how do we describe this? Because it sounds completely different than Kiaayo and War Party, and it gives you a different skill set. And so, like,
that's a whole other conversation too. Like the flavors of dirt is almost a language in itself, where like maybe you or I might hear things like, okay, I'm hearing some like even order harmonic stuff besides using some op amps, or not that at all, and that's a language that is actually real. Like, you know, I think to people, even a couple years ago, I would have heard that and be like, what are you saying? And like, stop talking. Like, please don't say that. Whatever you're saying, I don't want to know. And now I get like, it's kind of like when I was learning code for Unity. I'm like, oh man, the nerdy stuff like just keeps going. There's no limit. So it's okay.
It's funny, me trying to describe a pedal to my wife, and I'm like, this is kind of glassy. It's a little shrill. She's like, what? So,
just words.
Yeah.